Most people over 40 don't fail to build wealth because they can't earn. They fail because they never own their time. If today is not chosen by them, tomorrow will never belong to them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do say and think." He understood what most people forget, that wealth is not measured in numbers, but in moments you truly command. Think about it. You can have the car, the house, the title, yet still be broke in spirit if your hours are owned by someone else. Real freedom begins when your calendar becomes your servant, not your master. True wealth isn't about stacking dollars. It's about buying back your mornings, your peace, and your purpose. Money is only useful when it purchases autonomy. The man who controls his time controls his destiny. This is a Stoic playbook told through the lens of Marcus Aurelius, focused, disciplined, and unshaken by noise. If you've ever felt trapped by success itself, stay with this story, because it will show you why 80% of people over 40 never build wealth and how you can become part of the 20% who do. Act 1, the Mirage. He watches the world move fast. Everyone seems busy chasing something, a car, a title, a neighborhood, a number, in a bank app that never feels big enough. The world calls it ambition, but he's starting to suspect it's something else, a mirage. At 40, the illusion begins to fade. The things that once looked like success now behave like debt. Every shiny purchase demands silent payments of time. Every upgrade takes another piece of peace. He looks around and realizes that the world isn't run by millionaires. It's run by people trying to look like millionaires. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself and your way of thinking." Yet most people build a life so complex that happiness becomes a luxury they can no longer afford. He remembers his 20s long hours, cheap excitement, no thought of tomorrow. His 30s promotions, pressure, and proof to others that he was doing well. Now past 40, he wonders, where did all that time go? Statistics reveal a quiet truth. According to a 2023 Fidelity study, over 63% of Americans over 40 have less than 3 months of emergency savings, and 80% say they feel financially trapped even if their income is higher than ever. It's not poverty that holds them, it's the structure of their lives. The mirage of wealth isn't made of money, it's made of comparison. The algorithm knows it. Every ad whispers you need this to be enough. And so the race continues, silently trading hours for impressions, joy for validation, and calm for consumption. He begins to see the pattern: when people can't measure, meaning they measure things. When they lose direction, they compensate with decoration. He recalls another quote from Aurelius: "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Those words strike harder now, because he realizes the cost of chasing more is not just financial, it's existential. He thinks of a colleague named Daniel. Daniel made 6 figures but never saw his kids awake. He called himself a provider, yet his family mostly inherited his absence. His car smelled like stress. His watch was expensive, but it never showed free time. Daniel was rich in money but poor in peace. This is the tragedy of the mirage: the richer the surface, the emptier the soul. Because when people build their lives on appearance, they must keep performing. Every new success resets the baseline. Every applause fades faster than the effort to earn it. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill, the cycle where satisfaction returns to baseline no matter how much one achieves. That's why the high from a bonus, a car, or a new house rarely lasts longer than a few months. The mind adapts and the heart quietly asks, what's next? He realizes the truth. Most people aren't running toward wealth. They're running away from discomfort, from silence, reflection, and the fear of not being enough. So they fill the void with stuff. But the Stoics knew better. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Wealth, then, isn't a number. It's a discipline. It's the ability to say no when the world tells you to say yes. He looks at his own life and starts a personal inventory. He lists every major purchase from the past 5 years. Next to each, he writes one question: did this free me or bind me? The list becomes uncomfortable. Some things gave him pride, others gave him anxiety. Most gave him nothing but maintenance payments, upkeep pressure. He begins to notice a pattern: freedom shrinks when comfort expands. The more he buys for convenience, the less capable he becomes of living simply. The more he outsources discomfort, the weaker his tolerance for reality. He's been taught that luxury is success, but maybe luxury is just dependence sold at a higher price. He thinks again of Marcus Aurelius. A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions. If one's ambition is comfort, he will live small. If one's ambition is mastery, he will live with purpose. And purpose always demands some measure of pain. At this point, something shifts. He begins to see wealth not as accumulation, but as subtraction. He doesn't need more, he needs less. Less noise, less obligation, less pretense. He wants space, not square footage, but mental clarity, so he experiments. For 30 days, he tracks his hours, his spending, and his stress. He discovers that 70% of his stress comes from only 20% of his possessions, the ones that own him back. The extra car, the oversized home, the endless subscriptions. He cancels 3, sells 1, and suddenly feels lighter. He doesn't feel poor. He feels clean. That feeling, he realizes, is wealth. Aurelius was right again. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Real wealth starts the moment he stops outsourcing his happiness. Now he writes a new idea in his journal. Not a formula made of numbers, but of meaning. He calls it the true formula for wealth. Wealth, he says, is built from 3 things. Time, the hours you truly own. Autonomy, the freedom to decide how you spend them. And options, the ability to shape your life instead of reacting to it. Time, autonomy, options. That's the real currency. Every decision is now tested by this rule. Does this give me more time? Does this give me more freedom? Does this expand my choices? If the answer is no, then it's not wealth, it's just another chain disguised as success. He shares this thought with a friend who laughs and says, "That's too simple." He smiles. Exactly, that's why it works. From this moment, simplicity becomes his strategy. He calls it the Mirage test. Before every purchase, before every new pursuit, he pauses and asks, is this freedom or fiction? The world won't applaud that choice, but neither will it own him anymore. And that's when the real story begins, when a man stops running toward illusions and starts walking toward intention. Because the mirage of wealth will always shimmer in the distance, promising satisfaction that never comes. But those who see through it, they begin the journey towards something rarer, sovereignty of self. Marcus once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's the essence of true wealth, not the abundance of things, but the absence of need. He looks at the horizon lighter now. He's not chasing, he's choosing. And as he closes his journal for the day, one line stands out in his notes. If wealth does not buy time, it is not wealth at all. He smiles. The mirage has faded, but the path has just begun. Next, Act 2, the traps after 40, where the mirage becomes the maze, and the true battle begins inside the mind. Act 2, the traps after 40. He used to think that turning 40 would bring clarity, but instead it brought complexity. Responsibilities grew, options narrowed, and in the mirror he saw a man who had everything he once wanted, but not the freedom he imagined. It's not that he failed, it's that he succeeded at the wrong things. He begins to notice 2 invisible traps tightening around him, quiet, respectable, and deadly. The first is the golden handcuff. It doesn't look like a prison. It looks like a promotion, a raise that buys weekends, a bonus that costs peace, a job too comfortable to leave and too costly to keep. The world calls it stability, but stability often disguises captivity. Seneca once wrote, "Slavery doesn't just mean chains and ownership. It means dependence, the loss of your power to say no." And that's exactly what the golden handcuff steals the right to refuse. He looks around his colleagues earning more but smiling less. According to Gallup, 53% of people over 40 report feeling emotionally detached from their work, even in high-paying jobs. They wake up in houses they don't enjoy, drive cars they barely notice, and rush toward a retirement that feels like a rescue mission. He sees it everywhere, men and women over 40 working harder than ever, not to advance, but to maintain. Because when your expenses rise with your income, your freedom doesn't grow, it evaporates. The second trap is even quieter. The energy leak. It's not financial, it's psychological. It shows up in the little habits that drain more than they give. the late night scrolling, the second glass of wine that blurs tomorrow's clarity, the endless dopamine loop that steals the mornings and clouds the mind. Marcus Aurelius warned, "You will become what you give your attention to." If attention is the currency of life, then distraction is the tax on the living. He starts tracking his energy like an accountant. 7 hours of sleep become 5. Morning focus replaced by notifications. Creative work traded for reaction. 1,000 cuts of distraction that no longer hurt because numbness feels normal. He realizes the cruel irony. After 40, most people don't lose energy because of age, they lose it because of leakage. Because of the mental rent paid to noise. Studies confirm this. The average person over 40 now spends 3.5 hours a day on their phone with more than 150 pickups daily. That's nearly 50,000 distractions a year. And every one of them costs a fragment of focus, a tiny withdrawal from the account of purpose. So he draws a line, a Stoic line. One side for what he controls, one side for what he doesn't. He writes, "I can control my effort, my calendar, my spending, and my skills. I cannot control market's opinions or yesterday." It sounds simple, but it's radical because the modern world trains people to obsess over what they can control. Stock prices, comments, politics, reactions, all distractions pretending to be responsibilities. He remembers a quote from Epictetus: "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." He decides to reclaim it inch by inch. He begins the 14-day Stoic reset. For 2 weeks, he practices 4 rules: guard the calendar. No meetings before 10 a.m. Mornings are sacred. They belong to deep work. Guard the dopamine. 1 scroll window per day scheduled, not spontaneous. He trades digital noise for morning walks and handwritten notes. Guard the wallet. Every purchase must pass the freedom test. Does this free me or bind me? Guard the effort. He gives 100% where he can influence and 0% where he can't. By day 10, something changes. Silence feels less empty. Mornings stretch longer. His focus sharpens like an instrument tuned after years of static. He realizes control is not limitation, it's liberation. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength, he learns, is not loud. It's quiet. It doesn't scream. It decides. He sees how both traps, the handcuff and the leak, feed each other. The golden handcuff trades time for money. The energy leak trades clarity for distraction. Together, they ensure that even high earners stay poor, not in cash, but in control. He remembers a story from a mentor. "Most men don't sell their souls," the mentor said. "They lease them 1 paycheck at a time." That line haunts him because it's true. He starts to question everything that feels normal. Does the job serve the life, or does life serve the job? Does this comfort buy peace, or does it bury purpose? The answers are uncomfortable but necessary. And that's when he learns the first real Stoic law of freedom: if you cannot say no, you don't own your life. So he begins to simplify: 1 expense, 1 commitment, 1 habit at a time. He calls it subtraction as strategy. Every removal feels like regaining breath. He sells the second car. He cancels subscriptions. He moves from reaction to intention. At first it feels small, then it feels like oxygen. He's not chasing happiness anymore. He's designing it by removing what drains it. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And now he sees it. It's not the years that slip away, it's the moments traded for noise. So he makes a decision: no more leakage, no more silent trades. Every hour will serve either peace or purpose. That's the new wealth plan. Not about earning more, but owning more of himself. He takes one last look at his notebook at the Stoic line dividing control from chaos and writes beneath it, "Control is the seed of freedom, and freedom is the soil where wealth grows." He closes the page. The traps are still there, but now he sees them. And awareness is the first step out. Next comes the audit, a hard, honest examination of time, money, and energy, because what you don't measure controls you. Next, Act 3, the Stoic Audit, where freedom becomes a formula and discipline becomes wealth. Act 3, the Stoic Audit. He used to think wealth was a number, a balance sheet, a line on a screen that said, "You're safe now." But now he knows that was never wealth. That was only noise. True wealth begins when the noise fades, when you can finally hear the sound of your own life again. And to hear it clearly, he must perform what he calls the Stoic Audit, a three-part inventory of time, money, and energy. Not to judge himself, but to see himself. Because as the Stoics knew, an unexamined life is a wasted one, and what you don't measure quietly masters you. Part 1. The Time Audit. He starts with time, because time is the most expensive currency no one guards. He prints a blank calendar, 7 days every hour visible. For 1 week, he records everything he does, every scroll, every meeting, every distraction, not to punish but to reveal. He marks each block with a color, value actions that move life forward. Maintenance tasks that keep things running. Noise, the false busyness that looks productive but feels empty. By Sunday, the truth hurts. Only 20% of his week is green, half is blue, and nearly 30% is red time traded for validation, comfort, or escape. He realizes that he doesn't need more time. He just needs to own the time he already has. The data matches reality. According to Harvard Business Review, the average professional loses 2.1 hours a day to task-switching distractions that break deep focus. That's over 760 hours a year, the equivalent of 19 work weeks. 4 months gone. Every year, he whispers. No wonder people feel behind their leaking years through minutes. So he rewrites his schedule beginning with a Stoic principle. If it's not aligned with purpose, it doesn't belong on the calendar. He blocks mornings for deep work, evenings for reflection, and inserts white space time with no agenda. Because silence is not wasted time. It's where wisdom grows. He remembers Marcus Aurelius' reminder, don't waste the rest of your life in thoughts about others when you do not refer your thoughts to some common good. He decides his time must serve something higher than routine. Part 2. The Cash Flow Audit. Next comes money, because wealth without clarity is just anxiety in disguise. He opens every account, every bill, every subscription. No emotion, just observation. He sorts everything into 2 columns, fixed and variable. He sees the trap instantly. Fixed costs have multiplied over the years, mortgages, insurances, services, convenience fees, all quietly converting freedom into comfort. He remembers Seneca's warning, what difference does it make? How much is laid away in a man's safe or in his granary if he is always in fear of poverty? He realizes it's not what you earn, it's what you require that defines your peace. So he asks new questions. Which expenses buy freedom? Which buy friction? He cancels 6 automates, 2 and reduces 3. Each deletion feels like a breath returning. He sets up a new system, one inspired by Stoic discipline, 50% for essentials, food, shelter, protection. 20% for investing in broad, low-cost assets he understands. 20% for freedom-building savings, runway experiments, and time-off buffers. 10% for growth books, mentors, and skill development. He doesn't chase luxury anymore. He builds liquidity, a silent form of power that buys optionality. Because as Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. He automates savings, increases every quarter. He deletes subscriptions that don't serve purpose. He rebuilds spending around one rule. If it doesn't return time, energy, or growth, it's not an investment, and he begins to feel something new, calm, because simplicity doesn't subtract comfort, it multiplies control. He writes in his journal, when cash flow flows toward purpose, anxiety dries up. Part 3, the energy audit. Finally, he faces the hardest one, energy, because energy is the bridge between intention and execution. He opens a blank page, draws 3 columns, sleep, alcohol, social media, and he writes down the truth. Average sleep, 6 hours, alcohol, 5 nights a week, social media, 3 hours a day. He doesn't need a doctor to diagnose that. The math already speaks. He knows no amount of discipline can outwork a drained nervous system. So he commits to the 14-day energy reset. He halves alcohol intake for 2 weeks, sets a strict no-phone morning for the first 60 minutes, tracks social media minutes like expenses, and replaces stimulation with stillness, walks, breathwork, solitude. By day 7, the fog begins to lift. Focus returns, sleep deepens, mood steadies. He realizes the truth, peace is not found. It's built one disciplined choice at a time. Marcus wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But he now adds, "And your thoughts depend on the quality of your energy." He notices something else. Most people over 40 don't burn out because they work too much. They burn out because they live without rhythm, no boundaries, no recovery, no stillness. So he redefines success not by productivity, but by presence. To be fully where his feet are, that he learns is the rarest wealth of all. The new Ledger 3 audits complete. Time, money, energy. Each one a mirror reflecting not just choices, but identity. He sees the pattern clearly now. Every form of poverty begins with unconsciousness, and every form of freedom begins with awareness. He builds a simple tracker, his freedom ledger. Each week, he rates himself on 3 questions. Time freedom, how many hours this week were self-directed? Financial freedom, did money work for me, or did I work for money? Energy freedom, how many days did I wake up clear, not cluttered? He doesn't chase perfection. He chases progress, measured, visible, real. He writes one final note in his journal: audit yourself before the world audits you, because life always keeps score whether you track it or not. He looks up from the page and exhales. For the first time in years, he feels aligned. Not free yet, but facing the right direction. The numbers on the ledger mean less now, because he's finally measuring the right things. Time, energy, presence. That's wealth measured in life, not digits. He smiles and closes the notebook. Tomorrow he will begin to rebuild not from ambition, but from clarity. Because discipline without direction is just motion. And now he has both. Next, Act 4, the rules of capital, where the inner audit becomes outer action and money, time, and mastery begin to work together in silence. Act 4, the rules of capital. He sits in silence watching numbers move across the screen: earnings, expenses, returns. They used to excite him. Now they simply ask one question: what are these numbers doing for your time? Because money, he has learned, is not the goal. It's the tool, the amplifier of discipline, or the magnifier of chaos. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Wealth consists in learning to desire less." But the Stoics never rejected money. They rejected enslavement to it. And so he begins to rebuild from clarity to organize his wealth, not by category, but by function. He writes 3 words on a blank page: earn, keep, grow. These are the rules of capital, not complex, just true. 1. Earn, build the engine. To earn well, he first studies himself, not the market, not trends, himself. Because as Seneca wrote, it is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. Every great path begins within. He lists every skill he has, then circles the one that makes both impact and income. That becomes his craft. He commits to mastering it, not dabbling, not chasing. Mastery, not novelty, becomes the goal. According to the World Economic Forum, over 85% of jobs in 2030 will require new or reskilled capabilities. The people who thrive aren't the busiest, they're the most adaptive. He adopts a rule: 1 meaningful conversation every week related to his craft. Not networking, connecting. He follows up within 72 hours because attention is perishable. He builds an earn engine around 3 questions. What problem do I solve? Who pays for that problem to disappear? How can I deliver it better than before? He keeps it lean. Simple offer. Real conversations. Consistent follow-ups. No chasing algorithms. No chasing trends, just building reputation through results. He learns to stop seeking motivation and start seeking momentum, because wealth doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency. Epictetus would approve. First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. That's the first rule: earn with purpose, not pressure. 2, build the defense. He's seen people earn millions and stay broke because what flows in faster also leaks faster. Money without a moat disappears like water in sand. So he studies the Stoic idea of sufficiency. Seneca once said, "He who is contented is rich." That contentment becomes the defense strategy. He begins to keep wealth by reducing dependence. He lowers fixed costs. He builds 3 to 6 months of liquidity, not as luxury, but as leverage. Because freedom requires breathing room. He studies his financial risk. Variable rates refi to fixed. Subscriptions cut. Debt attack the high interest first, not emotionally, but strategically. He calls this the Stoic buffer, the distance between panic and peace. Then he automates his discipline. 15% of every income stream goes directly into investments. 5% to a runway account, his time-buying fund. All transfers automatic, no willpower required. He treats automation as philosophy because self-control that depends on mood is not control. A study from Vanguard shows that investors who automate contributions outperform manual investors by at least 1.5% annually. Not because of better timing, but because they remove emotion from the equation. That's the second rule. Keep by system, not by feeling. 3. Grow, build the garden. He turns to the third rule, grow, because still money stagnates. And growth properly done is quiet, not flashy. He studies the compounding curve, how time rewards patience more than brilliance. Warren Buffett made 95% of his wealth after age 50. Why? Because compounding is exponential, not linear. He writes in his journal, "You don't need to time the market. You need to give time to the market." He structures his growth into 2 layers. Layer 1, the core, broad, low-cost index funds, set and forget. This is the Stoic foundation, steady, emotionless, boring, effective. Layer 2, the edge. One focused vehicle. He truly understands a business, a productized skill, or a single real asset. If he can't explain the downside in one sentence, he doesn't own it. That's the Stoic investor's creed. If you can't sleep after buying it, you bought the wrong thing. He doesn't chase noise. He compounds quietly. Month after month, year after year, like gravity doing its work. He begins to feel a new kind of peace. Not the peace of having enough, but the peace of knowing why it's enough. The capital discipline routine. Every Sunday, he performs a ritual, 15 minutes of what he calls the capital discipline routine. He reviews 3 questions. 1. Did my skills earn value this week? 2. Did my systems keep what I earned? 3. Did my assets grow without my constant attention? If 2 out of 3 are yes, he's winning. If not, he adjusts not emotionally but mathematically. He doesn't need luck. He needs feedback. He tracks his wealth score weekly, a blend of time freedom percent, liquidity months, and growth rate. It's not about being rich. It's about being resilient. Marcus would call that alignment living in harmony with reason, not reaction. He realizes something profound. The Stoic didn't seek poverty. They sought peace through proportion. To own things without being owned by them. To use wealth as fuel for virtue, not validation. That's why he now sees capital differently. Not as accumulation, but as capacity, the ability to act freely when purpose calls. The new rule. He closes his notebook thinking of all the years he traded hours for approval. He smiles now, not bitter but awake. He whispers, first master yourself, then master your craft, then let compounding do the quiet work. Because the ultimate Stoic rule of capital isn't about finance, it's about philosophy. Control the self, design the system, then trust the process. He looks up at the horizon, calm but certain. The world will always chase bigger, faster, louder. But he's learned that real power compounds in silence. And from that silence, freedom grows. Next, Act 5, the 90-day Stoic Sprint, where theory becomes action and wealth turns into rhythm, one disciplined day at a time. Act 5, the 90-day Stoic Sprint. He stands before the mirror, quieter than ever. No noise, no goals pinned to the wall. Just one question reflected back at him. What can discipline build in 90 days? Because wisdom without action is decoration, and philosophy without practice is just poetry for the untested. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And so he decides for the next 90 days he will not plan debate or hope. He will act. He calls it the 90-day Stoic Sprint, a blueprint for freedom forged in routine and resilience. 90 days of clarity, structure, focus. And in those 90 days, he wants to test a simple truth. Wealth is not just money. Wealth is the power to own your time, to choose your actions, and to live life on your own terms. That is real wealth: time, autonomy, options. When you control those 3, money follows naturally. Week 0. The reset. Before the sprint begins, he clears the field. He opens his accounts and cancels 3 recurring expenses, anything that doesn't buy focus, health, or freedom. He blocks 2 deep work sessions each day on his calendar, 90 minutes of pure, undistracted creation. And he chooses one skill, one market, and one offer. Focus, he reminds himself, multiplies everything. He writes in his journal, "Discipline is remembering what I truly want." According to the American Psychological Association, 92% of people fail their goals not because they're lazy, but because they never define how to act daily. So he builds a system that fits on a single page: one skill to master, one offer to build, 15 real conversations each week, 3 key actions every day: simple, measurable, binary, done or not done, no gray area. Weeks 14, motion creates meaning. The first month is about motion, not perfection. He starts small, one conversation at a time, one task at a time. He tracks every hour, every distraction, every sale. 10 calls a week, 7 rejections, 1 yes, and that single yes fuels 40 more hours of belief. He begins to see rejection differently. It's not a wall, it's feedback. It sharpens him like a blade through resistance. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." So he leans into discomfort. Every no is a sign he's in motion. By week 3, the rhythm appears. He wakes early, works deeply, sleeps better. His anxiety fades, replaced by momentum. He starts tracking his freedom metrics: time spent creating versus reacting, hours owned versus hours obligated, energy at wake up versus exhaustion at night. The data tells the truth, progress is visible. Because effort leaves evidence and evidence builds faith. He smiles. This is what compounding feels like in real life. Weeks 58, systems over emotion. The second phase begins. He doesn't want chaos. He wants a system. He automates everything: 20% of income to investments, 10% to savings, 10% to his runway fund, a reserve of time. All automatic. No willpower required. He reviews every fixed expense and cuts 15% without losing happiness. He replaces comfort spending with growth spending. Tools, books, skills, things that earn back time. He separates personal and business accounts, sets clear boundaries, and finally feels clean. The noise of uncertainty quiets down. He doesn't need to chase motivation, structure carries him. Seneca wrote, "Order brings peace to the soul." He feels that now. Order isn't boring, it's liberation. He's learning the difference between being busy and being effective. Busyness burns time. Effectiveness buys it back. Weeks 9-12, compounding in silence. The final phase is about building something that lasts. He picks one repeatable play, a retainer client, a productized service, or a simple investment that grows quietly. He no longer needs 10 things to work. He needs one thing done consistently. Each week, he reviews his freedom dashboard: time, freedom percent of hours self-directed, cash flow, gap income minus burn, runway months of security, autonomy days he chooses what to work on. The numbers rise slowly but steadily, because small, consistent growth beats sudden explosions. By day 75, he feels something shift. He no longer wakes up reacting to the world. He wakes up directing it. He writes, "Discipline has become my calm. Routine has become my rebellion." And on day 90, he stops. Not because he's done, but because he's different. He looks at the evidence: less noise, more clarity, less distraction, more control, less chasing, more choosing. He reads back the line from his first day: wealth is time, autonomy, and options. And now he smiles because he finally understands what it means to own his life. The reflection. The 90 days are over, but freedom doesn't end here, it just changes form. He realizes, you don't need more time. You need fewer distractions. You don't need more income. You need more intention. And you don't need to chase freedom. You need to measure it, build it, and protect it. He closes the notebook. 3 months ago, he wanted success. Now he wants sovereignty. As Marcus wrote, "A man's worth is measured by the things he can control." And at last he controls his mind, his calendar, and his direction. The Stoic Sprint ends, but the rhythm continues: quiet, powerful, deliberate. Because freedom once earned must be defended. Next, Act 6, Pitfalls and Protections, where the Stoic builds his shield, protecting freedom from the chaos outside and the noise within. Act 6, Pitfalls and Protections. He once thought freedom was the finish line. Now he knows it's maintenance, because freedom unguarded decays, slowly, silently, predictably. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And when the mind drifts, so does the life." After 90 days of clarity, momentum, and growth, he stands on new ground. But the higher he climbs, the more subtle the dangers become. Not chaos, not failure, distraction, comfort. Overconfidence, he calls them the four pitfalls after freedom. Pitfall 1, the shiny object syndrome. It starts with success. Momentum feels good. Opportunities appear everywhere. New ventures, new markets, new dopamine. He remembers Seneca's warning, everywhere means nowhere. When everything looks interesting, nothing stays meaningful. He learns that scattered energy is silent poverty. So he builds what he calls a not now list, a list of every tempting idea he's not allowed to pursue yet. He reviews it quarterly. If the idea still shines after 90 days, it earns his attention. If not, it dies, and he loses nothing but noise. Because sometimes saying later is how you protect now. Pitfall 2, the golden blur. The second pitfall is subtler, the golden blur. Success brings lifestyle inflation. More comfort, more upgrades, more justification. He remembers a quote from Naval Ravikant, "Luxury blinds you to the real price, your freedom." He audits his habits again. Does comfort support his growth or sedate it? He cuts what dulls his edge, the unnecessary subscriptions, the excess purchases, the constant convenience. Because the line between peace and pleasure is thin, and the wrong comfort becomes a cage. He decides peace must be earned, not bought. Pitfall 3, the blurred boundaries. The third pitfall is boundary erosion. When personal and business finances blend, chaos follows. When friendships mix with deals, clarity disappears. He's seen it ruin many after 40, not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of separation. He builds structure. Every partnership, every asset, every project gets a written agreement, signed, dated, and clear. He treats boundaries as an act of kindness, not suspicion, because clarity protects both sides. As Epictetus said, be discriminating about what images and ideas you permit into your mind. Boundaries are filters for money, relationships, and thought. Pitfall 4, the dopamine drain. The final pitfall is the quietest mental erosion. Dopamine loops that re-enter once success feels normal. The phone, the feed, the drink, the scroll. Little leaks that cost more than money, they cost meaning. He builds the dopamine defense protocol, his modern Stoic practice. 1. No phone mornings. The first 60 minutes belong to silence, not screens. 2. Alcohol limits. Weekdays dry, weekends mindful. 3. Social media only in scheduled blocks, never by reflex. 4. 1 24-hour digital fast each week. At first it feels restrictive. Then it feels like breathing again. He realizes peace doesn't come from adding. It comes from subtracting the unnecessary. Seneca said the greatest wealth is a poverty of desires, and he now lives that line. The Stoic shield. How freedom defends itself after falling and rising, he builds a final system, the Stoic shield, a protection plan for freedom grounded in 3 disciplines. 1. Awareness audit. Every Sunday he reviews his week for leaks, time wasted, energy drained, clarity lost. 2. Financial firewall, separate accounts, written agreements, taxes, savings, and risk managed by system, not guesswork. 3. Mental armor, silence, journaling, cold mornings, physical training, the rituals that make the mind stronger than circumstance. Because the enemy of freedom isn't chaos, it's comfort. In protection isn't paranoia, it's maintenance. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He repeats that line like a vow. He understands now freedom is fragile. It decays when unguarded. So he guards it not with walls, but with awareness. Practical exercise. The Stoic reset cycle. He designs a simple reset routine to repeat every quarter. 1. Delete 1 distraction. Something small that steals focus, an app, a group, a habit. 2. Audit 1 account. Cancel, cut, or clarify. 3. Rebuild 1 ritual. Add something that strengthens sleep, stillness, or sweat. 4. Reflect 1 hour in silence. No phone, no input, just writing and thinking. He calls it maintenance of the mind, because a clear mind is the best investment hell ever hold. The closing reflection. He no longer fears losing freedom because he knows how to rebuild it. He no longer seeks balance, he practices it daily. He writes in his journal one final line for this act: freedom is not a moment, it's a maintenance plan. And beneath it he adds, guard your time like treasure, guard your peace like oxygen, guard your habits like identity. He smiles, closes the notebook, and looks out the window. The city still moves fast. The noise is still loud. But inside he is steady because he finally has a system that protects what matters. And that's when the next thought arrives, the one that every Stoic must face in time. If wealth is freedom, then what does it mean to exit? Not retire, but reallocate to choose what stops and what begins again. That question leads him forward to Act 7, the exit vision, where he will redefine what enough truly means, and how to live the second half of life lighter, wiser, and entirely by design. Act 7, the exit vision. He no longer measures success in dollars, followers, or deadlines. He measures it in mornings, the mornings he owns, the mornings that start with silence, not alarms. Because true wealth is no longer a number, it's a rhythm, a way of living aligned with intention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And at this stage, he isn't chasing more years, he's chasing more life within the years he has left. The turning point. After decades of work, after the sprints and the systems he sits with, one quiet realization: he no longer wants to retire. He wants to reallocate to give his best attention to what matters most. He calls it the exit vision, a personal philosophy for the second half of life where success transforms into significance. It begins with 3 sentences. 1. The freedom number, the amount that covers his core yearly expenses multiplied by 25. Not to hoard wealth, but to end dependency. 2. The income mix, slow compounding assets for the base. 1 narrow high-skill operation for the edge. 3. The transfer of time, what will stop and what will begin. He doesn't want to escape work, he wants to elevate it. He no longer asks, how do I make more? He asks, how do I make it mean more? The wealth shift. He studies what happens to most people after 40. The data is sobering. Over 78% of professionals over 40 report declining energy and focus after age 45. 2/3 say they feel stuck, trapped in routines that once paid well, but now cost peace. And nearly 60% regret not learning how to earn independently earlier. He sees it everywhere: people imprisoned by their own success. Their lifestyle owns them, their calendar owns them, their title owns them. And he whispers the Stoic truth: if you do not own your time, you own nothing. So he redesigns his life using one equation: freedom, shucks, simplicity, plus autonomy, plus purpose. Each decision must add to one of those 3. If it doesn't, it's cut, no matter how shiny. The reallocation of life. He begins what he calls the reallocation ritual. It's not about quitting, it's about repositioning. Phase 1, subtract. He stops doing one thing each week that no longer aligns. Meetings, obligations, commitments that drain. He doesn't announce it. He simply stops showing up to things that don't matter. Phase 2, simplify. He replaces busy with productive and productive with peaceful. He redesigns his week around energy, not ego. 4 deep days. 3 recovery days, time to build, time to breathe. Phase 3, seed. He plants something new, a skill, a mission, or a cause, not for profit, but for meaning, because meaning compounds longer than money ever can. He starts mentoring 2 younger founders, not to teach them how to win faster, but how to suffer smarter. Because wisdom shared is the only form of wealth that multiplies by giving. The freedom equation reimagined. He opens his notebook and rewrites the old line: wealth, just in time, autonomy, options. And then underneath it, he adds a second version: freedom, in time, with purpose, work with meaning, and money without fear. He realizes wealth was never the goal. Freedom was. And the only way to protect freedom is to live it daily. He spends mornings walking, thinking, journaling, afternoons for creation, evenings for presence. No rush, no noise. The more he subtracts, the richer life becomes. As Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He's no longer chasing abundance. He's curating it. The Stoic legacy. He begins to think about legacy not in fame, but in continuity. He doesn't want his ideas to die with him. He wants to leave systems, not slogans, habits, not headlines. He records what he calls the manual for my future self, what I learned about freedom, what I wish I had unlearned sooner, what I would teach my younger self if I could meet him again. He writes it not for others, but to remember, because memory fades, but written clarity compounds. He includes one final Stoic reminder: do not live as if you had 1,000 years. The rebirth, it's a strange kind of peace, this freedom. It's not exciting. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, measured, deeply satisfying. He wakes up with purpose again, not to achieve, but to align. Every morning begins the same way: silence, breath, gratitude. He doesn't need to escape life anymore. He's finally living it. He understands now that the exit vision isn't about leaving the world. It's about entering it fully with clarity, simplicity, and control. He closes his notebook, looks out the window, and smiles. The first half of life was about building. The second half is about becoming. And for the first time, he's not chasing wealth. He's walking in it. Because wealth was never numbers, it was always time, autonomy, and the power to choose how to live. He whispers one last line into the quiet morning: freedom doesn't begin when you stop working. It begins when your work becomes an expression of who you are. Closing reflection. The second life, he lives now as if this were his second life, and he is living it better because he finally learned from the first. Marcus Aurelius said, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." He nods. This is what it means to live properly. Not to rush, not to prove, but to choose deliberately, daily, freely. He closes with one final vow. The goal is no longer to get rich. The goal is to stay free. The camera fades. The light softens. And the story ends not with applause, but with peace. Because the true measure of wealth is not how much you earn, but how quietly you live when you finally own your time. After 40, he doesn't need more hustle quotes. He needs fewer, better moves, repeated without noise. Because wealth isn't a trophy to display. It's the quiet power to choose your next hour and the wisdom to choose it well. If this message resonates, take the next step. Begin your 90-day sprint toward clarity and control. Audit one area this week: your time, your cash flow, or your energy, and make one deliberate change. Your future isn't built in decades. It's purchased one disciplined hour at a time. And if you seek more frameworks like this, Stoic, grounded and practical, subscribe to Making Life Better. Each guide is a map toward more freedom, less noise, and a life lived with intention.